News webinar. My name is Kimberly Brown Harden, and I'm the Northwest Regional Coordinator from the Indiana State Library's Professional Development Office. I will be moderating today. My guest this morning is KT Lowe, Coordinator of Library Instruction and Service Learning from IU Indiana University East. I'd like to start off the webinar with a few announcements. This webinar is provided as part of the Academic Library Series. To register for other webinars available for this theme or other trainings available from the Professional Development Office, please see the Indiana State Library's events calendar, which can be found on our website at library.in.gov. For a full list of our current in-person training menu, please see our continuing education website. The Indiana State Library has many ways we try to stay connected to library staff across the state. For weekly updates on upcoming trainings and to learn more about what's happening in libraries across the state, please subscribe to our weekly e-newsletter, The Wednesday Word. We also offer a blog which provides information about the Indiana State Library's collections, interview spotlights on library staff from across the state, and information about upcoming events at the Indiana State Library. If you do have a question, just type it in the chat box on the upper left of the screen. I'll be watching and we'll get your question to the presenter as soon as there's a good opportunity. We will have time at the end for questions. This session is 1 hour, so you'll get 1 LEU for today. I'll be sending those out sometime in the next few weeks, along with a link to this webinar in case you'd like to refer to it in the future. If at any point during the webinar you experience any technical issues, please enter your issue into the chat box as well. Now, let's get started with today's webinar, and I will turn the mic over to KT Lowe.
Thank you, Kimberly. So, what is fake news? Well, for starters, it's absolutely nothing new. So fake news has been around since essentially the dawn of print. There's a great article in the New York Review of Books that came out last week. It's basically the pre-19th history of fake news. They start off with a guy named Procrosus, who was an advisor to Emperor Justinian I, who was the emperor of the Byzantine Empire. And basically this guy would kind of dig dirt up on people, and especially the emperor, and use it whenever he felt the need. It's pretty much like he was a gossiper of the day, but he used it and without judging the veracity of the stories that he was gathering. This story also goes through French fake news, which is 18th century. Are there fans of Alexander Hamilton? Please raise your hand if you like Hamilton. I see one hand already. So our buddy Alexander Hamilton, he founded the New York Post, which is basically a fake news blog for the most part. He did not verify most of the news that he reported. Instead, his job was to promote the things like the federal issues that were pertinent to what he was doing. As the Secretary of the Treasury, he had a tremendous amount of power in his position and used that newspaper to promote that viewpoint. So for a more recent example, I've got this image here. This is from the Harvard University Law School. They collect these things called broadsides. These were 19th century publications in England. They've got, I think it's about 130 right now. This one depicts a very specific trial. It was the shooting of William Ware by John Thurtell. Notice the date on this is 1833. The actual murder happened in 1823. This murder had a tremendous amount of currency. The broadsides themselves were very cheap ways to publicize information. You see the price on it is 1 penny, when a newspaper could be as much as 6 pence. And it was, but the heavy emphasis on illustration meant that anyone could access these. They were meant to be attractive. They were not necessarily intended to provide the facts, however. These broadsides contained a tremendous amount of information, much of it falsified by the writers of the broadside. So on the back side of this, you'll see everything from a detailed description of the murder, which doesn't actually match the facts of the murder, a confession, quote unquote, from John Thurtell himself, and various other accounts that are present there. Some of them were reprinted from previous broadsides. For a detailed explanation of this, there's a great book I highly recommend. It's by Judith Flanders. It's called The Invention of Murder. So if you're really interested in this particular case and things like the Maria Martin case, which is another sensational case of that time, it's a book that's really worth checking out. It's now available in paperback. So how could someone buy this broadside for just a penny? Well, things haven't changed. It's called advertising. So on the left, I've got an advertisement for asthma cigarettes. I'll let that sink in for a second. Good. Yes, asthma cigarettes, of which there were many different kinds available. Now, of course, no one bothered to double-check the claims of these advertisers. Why? Because they were paying for the publication of the paper. Wow. So, sweet advertising dollars have always funded publication. Today on the bottom, we have our sponsored links. That's the modern-day example of the same thing. So today, it's basically pennies on the dollar. So you click on that, and it's a couple of cents. You've probably heard about all the fake stories coming out of Eastern Europe. So there's a city in Macedonia. The city is called Velez, V-E-L-E-S. The average annual income there was about $4,800. But beginning in 2015 and going through the election in 2016, there's about 300 residents of this village who started creating fake news. Most of them were teenagers and people in their early 20s. Were significant amounts of fake news, most of it pro-Trump oriented, and some of them claimed returns of up to $3,000 per article. Wow. So if you wrote something really popular, you made lots of money. So $3,000 for one article with an average annual income of $4,800, yeah, you're probably writing fake news, aren't you? Yeah. One person claimed returns of up to $60,000. Now, some fake news is written for propaganda purposes. There's a lot of articles out there about Russia's use of fake news to perpetuate its reputation abroad. However, the vast majority of fake news is written for cash, because even the propaganda ones are often tied to that same advertising dollar model. So when we talk about fake news today, one of the first people we really have to mention is Melissa Zimdars. She is a professor out of Merrimack College and was one of the first people to come out right after the election talking about fake news. So on November 15th, 2016, she started writing articles on her own personal blog talking about the categories of fake news. So category 1 is entirely fake. So that's your Macedonian stuff, the stuff that was completely made up out of whole cloth. Category 2 is a mix of fake and real. We're going to take a look at an example of this later. It's, to me, the most confusing of the types of fake news out there. It really does combine truth and fiction in almost equal amounts. It's kind of hard to discern the two. Category 3, it's usually a clickbait title, but often contains some facts. This one is a little bit harder to discern. The sites can be from anywhere. They're usually something you find on Facebook, but sites like the BBC, NPR, Washington Post, some of them are prone to similar activity. Category 4 is satire. For those of you who are familiar with The Onion or the Borowitz Report, it's all satire. It's great. It's wonderful. I hate to tell you this. I have to explain to my students what The Onion is. I do not know what rock they're living under. I don't want to live there with them. Now, she was attacked. Professor Zimdars was attacked for releasing this list and for continuing this work. But she's expanded it since. I have the link here. It's a table of sites. Everything from abcnews.com.co to Real News Right Now, and everything in between. It goes through these sites. It tells you what kind of fake news it is. There's a couple that are, in fact, real news. So it's really worth investigating. It's an interesting list. It's one that continues to be compiled. It's an ongoing project between her and her students. The source for this, the main homepage, is opensources.co. So what makes fake news fake? I'd like to take your suggestions on this. Unqualified researchers, very good. So unqualified researchers is everything from bad sources to bad writers. Covers a whole lot of territory there. Very good answer.
Opinion, not fact.
Opinions, not fact.
Opinions versus fact.
That's better, opinion versus fact. I'm sorry, I'm actually reading on another screen right now, and even though I'm wearing glasses, it doesn't always matter.
And someone else is typing something. Cherry-picking data from irrelevant studies.
Cherry-picking data from irrelevant studies. That's very good, and that's really hard to discern. That's one thing where we really have to boost our ability to teach people how to search for information. We as librarians are more important than ever because we are the gatekeepers to all kinds of things. What else do we got? Looks like we got a few more. I think I'll take one or two more here.
Broad sweeping statements using never or all.
Using broad statements like never or all or breakthrough or smashing development. Anything that kind of goes wowie zowie, yeah, that's a pretty good symbol.
And then the last one, no sources were included in the article.
And no sources included in the article. I'd like to expand on this and say false sources were included in the article too. We're going to take a look at an example of that later. But right here, we're gonna just kind of go through my list here. You can't verify it. So I've got a story here. Dinosaurs are lactose intolerant. Incidentally, I totally made the story up. So don't bother looking this up. I told you, I totally made this up. Looks good though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You can't verify the story, not just because I made it up, but there's really no information out there. You don't know who wrote it. D. Airy Cows is probably not a real author, just saying there. Third, it makes you mad or scared or really happy. Wow, what a breakthrough discovery! Dinosaurs, lactose intolerant. I've never heard that before. That totally revolutionizes the field. Well, Dr. Frank Lee Wrong would be happy to agree with you on that one. Fourth, it comes from a fake site. I doubt the Weekly Meekly exists, but if it did, it'd probably be the weeklymeekly.lo.co. But it looks pretty good, so it might be a spoof site. Could be weeklymeekly.weeklystandard.com or something like that. So take a look at all the information that a site will give you to assess whether or not it's real. So why do we care about fake news? This is the question I always ask my students, and it's one that I get some really interesting answers on. They just kind of look at me and go, well, because you do. And that's not a good enough answer. Fake news matters for a number of reasons. So the first one I've got here is probably the most emotionally charged. We're being played for fools. So I have my Sally Field moment here. So fake news is written in a manner to get us to believe it. It uses emotional and alarming language. It gets our attention. It persuades us not to look further into claims. It charges us up. But by doing that, it plays us for idiots. And we're smarter than that. Your students, your patrons, anyone that you work with, you're all smarter than that. And to be played for a stupid person, that should be enough to make you righteously angry and combat this. Incidentally, the cat is real. That is my cat, and yes, he is the greatest cat in the universe. Second of all, so fake news ruins our credibility because it weakens our arguments, but it does mark us as a member of a group. So let's see, I'm going to confess that I'm liberal. Many of my friends are liberal, and so I get fake news that support pro-liberal causes or pro-liberal beliefs. By them sending me that fake information, they're acknowledging me as a fellow liberal, and they themselves are stating that they are liberals. However, that doesn't make it any less fake. They haven't bothered to check the quality of the information, so that's confirmation bias. And then they're implying that I'm one of their group, which is implicit bias. So between the two of those biases, which we're kind of programmed to do, we don't really, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place on that. But we still have to fight those biases because they're not good information. It ruins our arguments. It destroys the quality of the information we have. We don't know as much as a result of our implicit biases. The article that I got this from, it's an interesting theory. I'd like to see more on it. It's by David Brocker in Psychology Today. It came out in December of 2016. So it's his theory, and it's great. And I just hit something that I wasn't supposed to hit. There we go. Excellent. But the third one, and probably the most important problem, is that fake news can hurt you. It can hurt a lot of other people. It can kill you. Remember Pizzagate? You probably do. So Pizzagate, for those who don't know, that was a pizzeria in Washington, D.C. that was supposed to be a front for Hillary Clinton and her group of insiders for spreading child pornography. So this random person comes in with a gun and starts shooting up the place because he wants to stop the child porn. It's not true. It's not true. She's not a child pornographer. Seriously. No one died that time. But there was a recent shooting in Quebec, and people did die that time. So there are significant consequences of a significant nature as a result of fake news. Those are the big stories, though. What about things like Food Babe, Dr. Oz? It's like, okay, cholesterol really doesn't kill you. Smoking sage in your apartment will cause cancer. Whatever the claim is. These don't sound so dangerous. They're just kind of there, and I see them all the time. But the problem with these arguments is that they're not true. And for people who are looking for real answers regarding their health, they're being swayed away from the real solutions. There's really nothing that tops diet and exercise in the end. So you have people like Food Babe, who sells her own product line of materials. Right now, her current blog smears Snopes.com. While I don't think Snopes.com is the greatest, it's not bad for fact checking. They've really bumped up their game recently. But she's not attacking The Atlantic, which produced a scathing expose in 2015. Dr. Oz, this is a guy who should know better. Dr. Oz really is a doctor. He really is a cardiologist. He's very well respected. He's also peddling fake news, fake medical cures, fake breakthroughs, and amazing discoveries on his television show. This is a guy that really shouldn't be doing this. He's got the medical knowledge, he's got the credibility, but he's not stopping this from happening. He's making a lot of money right now. But that doesn't support the rest of us. There's tons of others. Incidentally, there's an article in The New Yorker from 2013 that covers Dr. Oz. Well worth reading. So how do we check for fake news? I've got a screenshot here of this particular site. Is it big enough? Can everyone see it? Can you kind of get a look at it? Are we good?
Yeah, I don't see it.
Okay, so everyone, we don't have any problems yet. So let's take a look at this particular site. This is cbsnews.com.co. So this is just an example of one of the ways that we can look for fake news. So the first thing I've got here is fresh or stale. When do you think this website was last updated?
Few weeks ago, a month ago.
You're saying a few weeks ago, someone's saying a month ago.
Somebody else.
December. Very good. It's December. What tipped you off?
Merry Christmas.
Very good. Merry Christmas. No one's talking about Christmas in February. Do you see any kind of description or byline or any information telling you who wrote these articles? Nope. Domain? Nope. Now, I didn't pull up one of the articles, But if you click on that top article, 8-year-old suspended for saying Merry Christmas, the sources that are linked to there do not lead to actual websites. You get a 404 error. Westview Elementary School.com is not a real website, and the article itself uses very vitriolic language throughout. So looking at these articles, how do you feel looking at this? You know, do you feel informed, or is there something else going on?
Makes you angry.
So,
Icky.
Icky, I love that word.
Heavy emotional appeal.
Heavy emotional appeal, manipulated. Yeah, exactly. That's what it's meant to do. And also, when you click on the Merry Christmas article, they make a point to distinguish that teacher as an atheist. So what makes real news real? And this is a question so many of us have not asked because we haven't had to ask this question. This is one that I'm having a hard time finding research on, to be honest with you. But I've got here a screenshot from yesterday's New York Times. Let's take a look at this. What's the source? Yeah, it's kind of hard to see. The source is the NewYorkTimes.com, nytimes.com. So that's their homepage. The author, her name is Somini Sengupta. Really, I'm sorry about the quality of the screenshot. If you look her up, you can find a LinkedIn profile for her detailing all of her work at the New York Times. She's been there since 2003. You see a record of her education. She has a personal website. She has a site on NewYorkTimes.com detailing her work. She's very credible. She has a track record of all of her articles, of all her work, of all her credentials. You can believe what she's saying. Can you verify this statement, Russia and U.S. clash over Syria? Just by the title itself, yes, you can. If you do a quick Google search and take a look, yes, there are 3 or 4 other stories that come up right away at the very top, aside from this one. What's the date? February 28th, 2017. It's fresh news. But there's one more thing. There's one more thing that I really want to cover. And it's the part that we don't really mention much at all. It's, I think, the most important one. Journalistic integrity. How do we know that we can trust the New York Times? It's been around since, what, the 1850s. It's one of the oldest papers on record in the United States. Aside from the ludicrous idea that the New York Times would suddenly throw away their credibility built up over 160 years to promote fake news now. So aside from that possibility, they have just an impressive standards and ethics code. So if you click on that, you will come up to a website. It's nytco.com, so it's part of the New York Times Company. They are a corporation. They are for profit. And you will get just pages and pages, lots of links. You'll see a style guide. You'll see a code of ethics for employees, not just reporters, those who work with the New York Times, so they're advertisers. You'll see a code for their responsibilities to their publics. You'll also see something, and I asked them about this yesterday, I'm waiting to hear back, about their credibility committee. So in 2005, they released a statement regarding what they do to ensure the credibility of their work. I really want to see this updated, and I asked when are they going to update this? I haven't heard back yet. If I do, you'll be the first to know. It's one of I love this standard of ethics because it's so, it's got so much going on. It's so comprehensive. NPR's ethics handbook is just as good. And what they do, it's actually, I think it's ethics.npr.org. I think it's just that domain. But again, the link is right here. If you look at that, you're going to see case studies throughout as to how to apply the ethics standards for for NPR, which is fabulous. So it's very clear cut. Any person, any lay person, not even a journalist, not someone in the field, can really get into this and understand what's going on. Why can you trust the NPR? There's also the American Society for News Editors put together a list. I think I counted 47 different news outlets. And it's their codes of ethics and codes of conduct. And it covers everything from very local, tiny little newspapers to, I think the Arizona Republic was one of them. So statewide newspapers, local newspapers, everything in between. Most of it was newspapers, to be honest. And there are some news outlets, I'm looking at you, CNN, that they're there. It's on CNN is on a WordPress site. It's not particularly good. It's a one-page read, but it is there. So they do have at least a minimal accountability statement. Still, if you can go to New York Times or NPR, please do so. Theirs are so much better. If you can find these codes of ethics, it's a way for you to hold your news sources accountable for what they do. You know who to contact. You know what to do. But there's also the Society of Professional Journalists. They have a code of ethics. It was derived from another code of ethics that belonged to a professional academic society, something like Phi Beta Kappa, but not quite. And of course, I'm standing right here right now, and the name escapes me. But this particular code was first established in 1923, and they've modified it ever since. So it's been updated to keep up with the times. Many journalists do adhere to this code of ethics. Not all, I hasten to add, but many of them do. It gives you a framework for understanding where your news comes from, why news people come to the conclusions that they do, what kind of process it goes through, what kind of standards they have. They're comforting. I wish I had something more rigorous than this, and I'm still looking, but I want to present this to you now because I think it's a very important thing to keep in mind. So I've got something for you to do. I want you to test some news. So I've got 3 stories right here. I've got one from Eat This Not That, from Reader's Digest Best Health, which is a Canadian page, and then Counter Current News. What I want you to do is pick one, or all 3, I don't care, but definitely pick one, and I want you to test this claim, and I want you to tell me whether or not you think it's true or false or somewhere in between. Note, one of these stories is true. So I want you to open one up in one browser tab, open a second browser tab, use that as a Google window, use it as a workspace to start checking claims, check authorship, check dates, check domain names. Take a look at these. Take a look and make sure they're true. You got 5 minutes. Which one?
Oh, somebody said Amy.
Ooh, not good. Okay, I wonder what's going on.
Oh, none are clickable links.
Oh no, because I can click them on my side.
Oh, Wendy said just Google the titles and sources.
Okay. If you still have trouble, I can probably get the URLs into a chat box.
Salmon story right off the bat. I had to click ads to get out of my way.
So some of the responses here are really interesting so far. But I'd like you to keep going. It looks like no one's looked at the second story on chocolate, which is, of course, a subject near and dear to my heart, almost as much as cats.
Let me see if somebody else. Oh, wait. What was that? The chocolate story was originally from 2009.
Yep, stale news on that one.
The chocolate one is legit. UC Davis Department of Nutrition.
Okay, so I've got most of you are saying that the farm salmon is fake. I've got one person saying that chocolate story is true. I've got one person saying the water defender story is fake. Let's keep going. I want to see a few more results.
Somebody said, second, she continuously is trying to sell her diet as she is telling nothing about the salmon, and I haven't even checked her credentials, etc. yet.
I've got what, 3 for fake on salmon?
The author, wait, where's the author of the salmon story is not a doctor. He is, in 2013,
Zinzenko, yep, David Zinzenko.
Galvanized Media, a company that creates life-changing health, fitness, food, and lifestyle content for brands and partners. Moneymaker. Not
You guys are coming up with some great stuff here. I'm telling you right now.
Water Defender story, definitely fake. Water Defender, while counter-current news site is not one I would rely on, it is verifiable that someone was shot by police after shooting at the pipeline and then giving chase, but the original link, counter-current news, is clearly playing to emotion of a certain demographic.
Mm-hmm.
Salmon, random combination of true-false facts. Salmon and water story fake. Chocolate story real.
Interesting. So
somebody gave us a link
to cbsnews.com. Please shoot me in. Yep.
Yeah.
He's absolutely right. Okay, so I've got some results in, and it looks like many of you have gone through this. Shocking facts about farm salmon. I noticed that none of you got the link for the Department of Washington State of Washington Department of Natural Resources. This was the easiest claim I have ever debunked in my life. I am serious. So the salmon story is almost entirely fake, point by point. The Department of Natural Resources for Washington, which is one of the states that has a lot of farm salmon going on, almost point by point debunks this particular article. It's almost fascinating to do this. I actually show, when I'm doing classes with middle school students, I'll show the 2 pages side by side and ask them, hey, which one do you believe and why? So I use it more as a credibility exercise because it's not even worth it for me to try to debunk it. The second one, is chocolate healthy? I usually consider this a mixed claim, although some of you are correct. You did find real claims and real studies in there. But it is an older story. It is from 2009. It's definitely stale news. And some of the other claims, such as alleviating PMS, they're a little harder to verify. Now, as for the countercurrent news story, yes, countercurrent news, totally intended to play on your emotions, absolutely has an agenda going on. But it happened. It's a true story. The victim of the shooting was 66-year-old James Leroy Marker. And the story was reported in local Jacksonville News, Gainesville, Florida News, and someone does have a link to a CBS.com link covering the shooting as well. While Countercurrent News is a terrible site and totally unreliable, this story is true. So what I'm showing you this for is how difficult it can be for people to identify real and fake news. How difficult did you find this? Was it a breeze, or was it really kind of a challenge for you? And it's totally okay if you didn't get it right. It's absolutely okay, because that's kind of the point. And a lot of you are typing right now, so it's going to take a second.
Somebody said it's a challenge. It's hard when a site you know isn't reliable. For example, Counter.
Yes.
Current News.
I threw in the Counter Current News site. Someone writes here that it's a challenge when you're using a site that you know isn't real. Yeah, that's the whole reason I put that in there. It wound up being a real news story on what's generally a fake news site, and that just throws a monkey wrench into everything.
Somebody else said it was only after being schooled in some of the red flag identifiers that it was easier. A year ago, I would have bought that salmon story.
Mm-hmm. And we all would have, incidentally.
Someone else said, I think it matters to what specifically you investigate. Some want to verify the source of the article. Others try to debunk the actual facts.
Interesting. Someone writes here, I think it matters to what specifically you investigate. So if you're looking at the source, if you're looking at the author, if you're looking at the facts, you might get a different picture every time. So that's a very good comment to make. And again, one of the reasons I picked the sources that I did.
Got a couple folks still typing here. Somebody said, it wasn't easy for sure, and I'm a trained professional. I can easily see how people are led astray.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else said, I first looked at the source and their website, was super skeptical, then Googled the story on Google News to see other reputable outlets reporting.
Yeah, so some of you used Google News, which is a news aggregate, to verify a story. It's a great tool. It's one that, honestly, I didn't think of, so thanks for telling me. And then another person said, it's a real challenge, even though you're a trained professional. Yeah, we all went to school for this. And it's pretty amazing how hard this was. So I did not expect everyone to get it right. And the fact that many of you did, it's like, kudos to you. So let's move on. This is my favorite fake news site and my favorite fake news story. And I just wanted to show it to you as an example of one of the things that I use. So this is Trinfinity8.com. The author is Dr., in quotes, Kathy J. Forte. Now, she is a clinical psychologist, I apologize, clinical psychologist. She's making a claim that the earth is hollow. Yeah. So this is one of the stories that I dissected. When I was starting to do this whole thing on fake news, I realized that my students had no idea what fake news was. So they would go to sites that are like this. Looks pretty good, Trinfinity8. It's a system of, I think, some kind of enlightenment thing. But this story is making a very wild claim, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. There is no extraordinary evidence here. So it's just an example of one of the things that I do. I really pull it all apart and start grabbing things so that I can show students what my process is, or at least part of the process. The story does go on for hours. She has a lot to say on this. It's really amazing. So what do we do? So there's a lot of sites that have our back. So according to the Duke Reporters Lab, which is affiliated with Duke University, 114 fact-checking initiatives in 47 countries is underway at this very moment. The Poynter Institute, POYNTER.org. They're the ones that are covering this story. And they cover the United States, most of Europe, and Australia for the most part. Not a lot of other countries are involved with it, so it's still kind of a regional idea. The lab also tracks 55 currently defunct fact-checkers because some of them are planning on coming back online. We see fact-checking sites go up and down according to needs. So originally there was, I think, an additional 8 more in the United States, but there were branches of PolitiFact that closed down after the election of 2016. So, but there's a lot of resources out there. There's more and more watchdogs looking out for us. The second thing we need to do is empower our patrons. So the first step in this is not give them all the stuff. The first step is telling them that they're not dumb. Our patrons are smart enough to come to us for advice. We need to reinforce that. We need to tell them that they are smart. They are smarter than what's going on here. We need to encourage them that they have the ability to debunk their own claims. They can find fake news themselves. And once we can encourage them that they are smart and they are strong and that they are capable, then we can instruct them into what to do using some of the tools that we presented today. So the third one is to practice good media hygiene ourselves.
I like that.
So I debunk 3 to 4 stories a day. My friends now send me fake news stories to debunk. It's really fun, the stuff they find. it's really great. So the one that Food Babe was doing on Snopes is fake. One of the claims in there is Snopes is in cahoots with Monsanto because they want to spread glyphosate. I'm sorry. That's the chemical name for Roundup. And Agent Orange is in everything, and it's ridiculous. It's the ravings of a mad person. It's worth the read for that alone. But debunking that was just great. I mean, you get a rush when you can prove that something is false, and you've got the facts to back it up. It's a great sensation, and the more we can do this, the more that we can model that behavior, the better we get at it, for starters. And the better that our patrons, our students, the people that we work with, whoever our clients are, the better off we all are. So remember also, number 4, fake news comes in lots of media. So it comes as digital memes. I'm sorry, your cat memes might be fake, even if the cats are real. Even the most reliable sources screw up sometimes too. So we see retractions in reputable newspapers. They routinely take statements and correct them, even if it's something as tiny as they misspelled a person's name. They will correct that, and they will tell you, which is one of the other ways that we know that real news is real. They correct their mistakes, and you see it. But the 5th, and probably the most important of all, as Mad-Eye Moody is happy to tell us, constant vigilance. Mad-Eye Moody had it right. You will not see a list of best sites. You will not see from me a list of, number 1 places you can always go, because that list may change. Instead, it's up to us to be aware at all times. We have to pay attention to the totality of a claim, the totality of the news source that we're accessing. I check claims pretty swiftly now. I can get it down in 5 minutes or less. And I use things that most people can access, things like PubMed, PubSpace, National Institute of Health, trusted news sites like the BBC, the New York Times. I do love the New York Times, even if the president doesn't. Data collection sites like Pew Trust. I use these sites to double-check claims because I can trust their veracity, but I also know that I may have to change sources if I find something that's unreliable often enough. Constant vigilance at all times.
Somebody said, me to take all my money in New York Times.
Yes, I am a subscriber. I love the Times. So, I'm opening up to questions right now. I do want to show you something, though. There's an easy way to stay in touch with me. This is the IU East Fake News LibGuide, and please open up. Does this open?
Somebody commented, I choose to disbelieve everything that I'm not interested in. That which I'm interested in, I research the heck out of it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so someone really researches things that they're interested in. Okay, excellent. This is the Fake News LibGuide. This is the resource that I created as a result of a class that I was teaching for speech communication. I actually needed a resource within 24 hours. I had a class I had to teach. I had no material. This is what I came up with. And the response was tremendous. It has been viewed over 50,000 times. I get email every single day. I've got an email from Beijing. I've gotten an email from Doha, Qatar. I've got an email from almost every state in the union asking me about this guide and whether or not they can reuse it. Please note, it has a CC license on it. If you like it, you may reuse anything in it. Blanket. Also, anything in the PowerPoint, any of the images, including my wonderful cat pictures, you can use those too. My cat will not mind. This contains most of the information that I presented to you today. But also, I've got here the resource tab, which is the second one. And I've got here the fact-checking links that I like to use. So I use LinkedIn for checking out professional credentials. I've got the fact-checked and PolitiFact here. I've got Snopes because even though, again, I have some issues with it, mostly because it's privately owned, it's not affiliated with a university. They've only recently started hiring real fact-checkers. It does cover claims that a lot of places don't, however, and in absence of other sources, it can be useful. I also include Veracity, which I was just tipped off to today at 8:15 this morning. Veracity is an iPhone app which allows you to reverse look up images. Now Google will let you do that too, and on a desktop or on an Android, that's still the best way to go. But if you're using an iPhone, Veracity is probably the best app out there for you. I have not found a good equivalent for Android. Other things I've got here, I've got a number of news stories about fake news. It's been a constant topic. I've got resources. I did include the Poynter Institute down here, Society for Professional Journalists, 5 Ways Teachers Are Fighting Fake News. These are exercises that cover everything from about 3rd grade to high school. Some of them are really good, incidentally. And I really, if you're looking for material, these are types that I would check out. Codes of Ethics here. I update this page probably once or twice a week as I find new resources. It's publicly available. You can access it from anywhere in the world. You can probably find it underwater if you tried. And my contact information is right here at the bottom. You can get a hold of me anytime. I'll answer your questions. I'll make corrections. Anything that comes up, let me know. You can also get a hold of me at my email address here. And now I open the floor.
Jennifer McKinley wrote, great resource. We've shared it on our Facebook page and patrons have been so receptive to it.
Oh, thank you so much. And so we still got some more questions coming in. I see people typing, which is just dandy.
Someone just commented, this is great.
Man, you're showing the love. I'm so happy. Thank you so much. I'm happy that I was able to provide something that you could really use.
It was great.
I think someone accidentally hit the enter key, which happens.
Yeah. Insightful, excellent presentation. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Somebody else said this guide is great.
I'm happy you like the guide. And again, if you find something, let me know. And I add, like I said, I add to this all the time. I did that in lieu of I could have added a slide to this presentation and with all the resources, but frankly, having it online as a LibGuide is a lot easier to get to. And it's a lot easier to disseminate.
Someone asked about the recording.
Looks like someone asked about the recording. I have been told that this is being recorded and you will receive a link. I will also receive a link, so you can view this anytime.
Someone said great presentation. Someone said wonderful. The whole presentation or just the audio being recorded?
Is the whole presentation or just the audio?
It'll be the audio.
Okay, we're definitely recording the audio.
Yeah, they'll be able to see the presentation as well.
Mm-hmm. So you would be able to see the presentation. You can also get a hold of me and I'll be happy to send you the PowerPoint.
I can put the PowerPoint up on our slide share if you
Oh,
like.
excellent. I was just informed by Kimberly that she can put the PowerPoint make it available, which that's great, that's wonderful. I advise that you read it in Notes View. I did type copious notes for some of these, and I do include links to the New York Review of Books story regarding the history of fake news, the Psychology Today article, a couple other resources.
And someone else, just great information. Thank you.
You are so welcome. I'm so happy you love it.
This was very interesting. Very great. Just sent the LibGuide link to see if we can promote it. Fantastic work.
Yes, you're welcome to promote the LibGuide. You're welcome to repurpose it. So if you want to design your own guide and use some resources from there, go right ahead. Go to town.
Excellent. Got a couple more. Someone else typing. It was so interesting. I didn't realize we had such a history of fake news.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, basically, since we've been creating print or any kind of system of writing, we've had fake news.
Wow. $60,000 to create some fake news? I might want to.
It's pretty amazing.
I might want to look into another job.
It's a great way to pay off my student loans, that's for sure.
Oh, someone said, thank you, awesome presentation. I really like the LibGuide.
I'm so happy you like the LibGuide. I'm happy that you like the resources. I'm happy you like the I'm just happy. Really, this is a great way to have a Wednesday. I'm so happy you could join me.
We are so glad you could come. Someone said they shared the LibGuide on their Facebook. Thanks again.
Yep, absolutely. Share it on your Facebook, share it with your friends. This is one of those things that you can spread like a virus, and it's totally okay.
Someone said, oh, yay, I posted the LibGuide on my Facebook, and my stepmother liked it. Now, may she please use it.
Great line about stepmothers and Facebook. Yeah.
Looks like people are just kind of. Looks like the questions have died down a bit, so we're going to go ahead and mute our mics for a moment. We will be here for another few minutes, so if you do have questions, please keep them coming. If not, if you need to leave, we appreciate you coming today. And again, you have KT's contact information, and continue to share those LibGuides. We will be here for a few more moments if you have questions. If not, we appreciate you coming today, and have a great rest of your day.